the kitchen of the cabin and around the world, this is Voices from the Solitude, a podcast about the coronavirus and gaming. Today I'm talking to Michael Fox. We talk about the virtual world tour and the role of states in closing conventions. So I'm here with master of mellifluousness and also designer of one of my favourite games of last year, Michael Fox from Hub Games. Michael, so the first question I've got for you is, how are you coping with the apocalypse?
It's a bit weird, isn't it? Which I think is the understatement of the century.
Weird as fuck.
Yeah, it's just really. I mean, so I am very much a person who relies on the presence of others to, charge my batteries, as it were, and it is very odd not sort of like seeing the folks that I get to see a few times a week, whether that's work people or people from gaming groups or just friends just coming over. And it's very I called it unsettling a couple of weeks ago, and it's kind of gone downhill from there, I reckon. Everything looks normal. Everything looks the same as it ever was. But then you sort of you put your head out the window, and rather than hearing like the cars tearing down the Ormo Road in Belfast, or just sort of like the general hustle and bustle of every day, and like I put my head out the window, and now I hear sort of the birds that are perching on a telephone pole across the way. And it's off-putting. It's unsettling. It's just that bit weird. It's like 28 days later, but good.
And in some ways it's kind of a reminder actually how significant we are, and actually maybe how much of a negative effect we have on the actual world surviving, right?
Yeah, we are a horrifying parasite as a race, as a species on this planet. But hey, it's the only one we've got, and I guess we got to do our own thing, which is very sort of like dismissive of the world. But I don't know. I'm kind of hopeful that there will be some sort of switch to positivity once all this is said and done, if it is ever going to be said and done, which, it's going to be highly unlikely that COVID-19 is totally eradicated, said Michael in his best sort of like, I am definitely not a scientist voice.
Dr. Michael Fox.
God, I'd love to be a doctor one day, but it'd just be sort of like some idiotic doctorate bestowed upon me by some rubbish university somewhere. But no, it's a new thing that's in our lives now, and I'm very glad that the vast majority of people are taking it incredibly seriously. But I'm equally angered and upset at the way that a small yet vocal and, dare I say it, fucking idiotic minority just sort of like seem to be not treating it with the deference that it deserves and requires.
Well, I mean, the point is, I've had a few sort of online flame wars with people sort of a week ago or so now, but still with people who in my local area were still trying to arrange game nights. And when people were saying, hey, maybe you should take it online, we're being incredibly dismissive. And it's, you can talk about the idea that people are going to die as a direct result of your actions. That seems awfully dramatic, but nevertheless is true. But it's not just that, is it? It's the fact that I don't get to meet my mates in the pub. If you do this shit, my job might end. If you do this shit, many people might not die of the virus, but might die of the stress of fucking destitution if you do this shit, right?
Yeah, it's Okay, so I mean, if you think about it, like if I were to get into a car behind the wheel, just close my eyes, put my foot down, and smash into the pavement, and boom, there you go. I've probably I have had a significant impact on human life. My decision to not do that means that I as a good sort of, okay, air quotes, a good member of society, my choice to sort of not run down people on the pavement is, it's a positive and good thing. My decision to leave the house as infrequently as possible. I mean, hell, I've left the house 3 times in the last 3 weeks, coming up on 4 weeks now. And this is what needs to be done. But the fact that so many people are not doing it is very strange to me. And the fact that so many sort of leaders, whether they be sort of governmental leaders, whether they be societal leaders, religious leaders, are sort of saying, no, it's okay. They're not saying, just do life as normal. But there is a lot of inference that this isn't as bad as people are making out, and I want to shout at people a lot, basically, and go, this can and will be bad. It's not just going to be lives that lost. This is going to cause huge societal shifts if it's not treated, like I say, with the deference that it needs to be treated with.
I mean, we've grown up in a capitalist society that is essentially, the trials and tribulations of society. An immunity has been granted to those that are wealthy and powerful, right? And yet this COVID thing seems to be affecting everybody. What has the reaction been in Britain to Boris Johnson ending up in intensive care? Because I've been talking about it with English friends of mine, and mostly it's like, wow, it's almost solidified how real it is that the people who are usually insulated from this sort of stuff are being affected by it. What's the atmosphere there like?
I mean, I will have to preface this with obviously the fact that I am in Northern Ireland, which is its own strange and curious and beautiful bubble when it comes to British politics. But one, obviously, it's taking in the British media, whether that's sort of newspaper reports or the BBC as a whole or whatever. There is a small, and this is going to sound really weird, I think that there is a small positive almost that somebody so high up has been stricken with this terrible virus. I think it does go to show that there is when it comes to a viral infection like COVID-19, that it's not going to sort of select people by who they are, through it's not going to select people to infect by their stance in society or their rank. It will hit indiscriminately. It is the car driving down the pavement of viruses. It's just going to hit whatever it's there. Now, there is, of course, a lot of language, I guess, that's being used in this sort of, Boris is strong, Boris is a fighter, being sort of put forward in the daily press conferences that we're getting from various members of his cabinet, saying, he's going to be fine, he's going to get through this. It's just sort of well, I am glad to hear that he's out of intensive care today. But this is going to affect him greatly. We've seen interviews with people who have been hit by the virus, and this is 2, 3, 4 weeks after they've been even released from hospital after a significant stay there, and they look like they've had the shit beaten out of them. Still, they're exhausted, they're tired, they're still under the significant effects of the remnants of this virus. Now, we know that societally, the people who are going to be affected by this the most are the working class people. They are going to be the people lower down the societal food chain, as it were. The so-called key workers.
I was speaking to Mike Barnes the other day, and he works in a supermarket, and the supermarkets have got to be open, right?
Yeah,
and it's the people who can't afford to miss work, or the people who have to give us our food.
I mean, the one thing that's bugged me a lot is the whole the NHS are the heroes. The supermarket workers are the heroes. They're not heroes. They're fucking stuck. They have to do this because it's their job. If your father didn't go to the supermarket to go to work, he ain't going to get paid. If he doesn't get paid, he ain't going to get food. It's weird, man. It's very weird times. But hey, I've been listening to a whole bunch of the interviews you've been putting up, and everybody's saying the same thing. It's just so strange.
So let's go on to what you've been doing as a company. And so you've been doing this thing called the Virtual World Tour. And I've been doing something similar in the sense that I felt it was necessary to speak to people from FLGSs and in my small way kind of get the word out there that you can help your local game shop from dying during this. So what is the Virtual World Tour, and what's the purpose behind it?
Yeah, sure. So the idea behind it was very much driven from Anita and Rory, obviously the company co-owners, and it was actually a similar kind of vibe. It's reaching out to local game stores around the world to say, how can we help? How can we sort of help you keep your names going, keep your places going, keep things up and running? While all this is going down. So at the moment, we've been working predominantly with stores based in the UK, and the idea is that we have transferred a whole bunch of our games onto Tabletop Simulator, available through Steam, which is basically a physics-based playground where you can build any tabletop game pretty much into their systems. And then we have been sharing them and sort of like essentially virtually visiting each store over the course of the past few weeks. So we'll sort of like say, all right, this coming Wednesday, we are going to be, air quotes, at such and such a store. The store then sort of gets to promote that event. And then the event is actually sort of like booked slots. It's almost like, think of it as it's like a virtual sort of traveling convention where every couple of hours we will start a new game on Tabletop Simulator. So, there's a bit of a minor outlay, as it were, to start off. So, obviously people have to have access to a computer. They have to have Tabletop Simulator downloaded onto their systems. But then we sort of like walk them through. We have a Discord channel for each of the games that we're playing, and then it's a member of staff from the Hub Games team essentially sitting down at that virtual table and running through one of our games, like Holding On or Prismarina, which come into Kickstarter later in the year in May. Adventure Mart, Flip Over Frog. We're going to be rolling out Untold Adventures Await as well shortly. But the idea then is once they've sat down and played with us, they get given a code that they can pick up stuff from our online store. With that, not only do we get support from people who are actually directly buying from us, they a good significant chunk of the money, a percentage, goes to the store itself as well. So even though those doors are closed and they're buying directly from us, the stores are still making money out of it. And there's been a whole bunch of different companies that I've seen who have been offering sort of services similar to this, like, buy something from our web store and 15, 20, 25% goes to a nominated local game store of your choice. We're just sort of ramping it up a little bit by saying, hey, come check out this virtual event, come play with us. And yeah, also help not only us as a company, but also help the stores that you love to go to when we're not in a time of crisis.
And how's it been working out? Has it worked out well? Have people been responsive?
Yeah, actually. It's been really nice. I mean, this is still sort of like very much early days. We've only done, I think, 4 days worth of events thus far. But now that we are essentially rolling it out a little bit further. So basically, the start events were all in the UK because they were kind of test runs for us to make sure that the systems worked, that the booking programs worked, that the actual combination between Discord and Tabletop Simulator worked. Hell, that people would even just show up. Now that we've sort of like had proof that it can work as a going concern, we're now sort of like rolling it out to other stores. So we're in contact with like a whole bunch of stores in the United States, which means that we're going to be obviously working on their time slots. We've been talking to companies and stores, all over the world, and even if it's just sort of like a few people who are showing up in the day, it's still a very, in my opinion, positive thing. It's still pushing forward this idea of community that we really, really all hold quite dear, whether it's the community of gamers, the community that are surrounding local game stores, the community of companies themselves. It's been really gratifying to see that people are into it. So yeah, the numbers are sort of like, they're creeping up there. And as we get more and more stores signed up, hopefully we'll get more and more people coming through the virtual doors.
So how has it been working during this situation? How is the company operating? Are the offices closed? And when it comes to things like conventions coming up in the future and the uncertainty around that, how has all of that been?
I mean, we're obviously, very lucky as workers at Hub Games. We're all able to work from home. We have our computers. We don't need to be in the same building. So yeah, the office was closed a few weeks ago, and everybody is, now working distantly, which is fine. We can do it. It's challenging. Of course, it's always going to be challenging. It's not as if I can just sort of like, throw a hula hoop at Rory and go, "Oi, you need to be checking through this script for this video, and then I can do this." Yeah, basically, it's not easy to harass other members of staff into doing the things you need them to do. Because, hey, we are all very, very far away from each other. But we're coping. Like we're on a stripped down schedule. Most of us working between 3 and 4 days a week, and we're just sort of like doing everything that we can to keep the virtual doors open, I guess. A lot of companies are going to get hit hard by this, especially as things like conventions are really not going to be. I mean, frankly, I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of conventions over the course of the rest of the year, despite the fact that most of them are still saying, "Hey, yes, we're happening. Everything's up and running." It's going to be tough for a lot of companies. It might well be tough for Hub Games, but we're going to do our damnedest to make sure that we keep on trying our best to make sure that people are A, aware of what we're doing, and B, hopefully buying our games.
And so when we talked about you coming and doing this interview, you sent me a message saying, "How salty am I allowed to be?" And I'm someone who loves contention in its many varied forms. And you said you have issues with certain ways people are dealing with this. What are the problems that you have?
I don't have problems with the conventions themselves, the convention organizers themselves. because I know that they're over a barrel. I know that they are unable to sort of pull the plug on a major event. I mean, if we take something like, let's say, Gen Con, which, if I put my screen up before me, Gen Con is still scheduled to happen in, at this point of recording, 111 days' time, July the 30th to August the 2nd. Now, if anybody out there thinks that the United States is going to be back up and running to be able to hold an event the size of Gen Con with, 60, 70,000 visitors traveling from all around the planet in 3.5 months' time, I think that is a wild, wild thought. But they cannot pull the plug on an event like Gen Con just saying, nah, it's done and dusted, because they are going to lose, frankly, everything. They need to be able to sort of like claim back on their insurance, but that's not going to happen until we have like state legislators, for example, in Indiana, go, okay, this event cannot happen. We need to pull the plug on it. And that would invoke the force majeure clauses in their insurance, which would allow them to sort of like, extricate themselves from the huge web of things that Gen Con is involved in. I mean, if you think of Gen Con, yes, it is a massive show that takes place at the Indianapolis Convention Center. But on top of that, they've got deals with countless hotels in the area. They've got deals with sponsors all over the place. They've got deals with restaurants. They've got deals with even something like the clothing that they would do. They have like, special promotional items that get sold every year. And all of these, if they were forced to pull the plug without any support from state legislation, from insurers, whatever, I think that would mean the death of Gen Con, and they don't want to do that. So they keep on saying, yeah, everything's going to be fine. We're going to keep on going. It's all still on as far as we're aware. And I think they're screwed. I hope that that legislators, the government, sort of like say, essentially, 2020 is cancelled. All of these events are done. We're not going to have them this year. We're going to focus on making sure that everybody survives, that deaths are as down as possible, and it'll be okay. Like, in the grand scheme of things, a gaming convention is lovely to have, but if it means that people are at risk of spreading a lethal virus, the decision is simple. It needs to be closed down. And we had Origins yesterday announcing that they were bumping their fare back to from in a few weeks' time to the weekend of the 7th to the 11th of October. And that's got its own things. That's got its own problems, because that's the month of Essen. The week after, we'll all be in Germany trying to get everything sorted out for literally the biggest game show on earth. And again, I think that Origins should be cancelled. But I think that they, again, are sort of locked in such a web of things that they would need to extricate their way out of. They're waiting for, again, like in their case, the Ohio legislation to say, no, this event cannot happen. And I don't know, it's one of those times you look to the leaders and you go, what the hell are you doing? You need to be sensible about this. And then you sort of like see stories on the American like news channels sort of like saying religious gatherings are fine. Yes, please go to church, go to mass. And everybody, all it takes is one person to be infected and then you're done. That's an entire huge group of people done. You've got states like Florida canceling testing because, well, whatever. I just find it absolutely wild that the people who have been voted in are so laissez-faire about it, I guess. It's strange. You keep on going further and further and further up the chain, and eventually you just sort of like hit a wall of what the fuck are you doing?
With that, I want to end kind of on a more positive note, I guess. What do you think we as a society can get, if anything, that's positive about this situation?
I realise that there's a big pause there, but there will be positives that come out of this. I mean, not just from sort of like from a games industry thing. I mean, if we want to focus on that for a second, it has been great seeing companies, basically open up their vaults and completely pivot on ways that they've done things. I mean, it was wild seeing Asmodee sort of going, "Hey, here's 5 print and play versions of our games a couple of days ago. Go for it." Even though a couple of them, like, can you imagine printing out an entire Dixit deck? I mean, that's quite impressive. But like seeing companies come together to do like free print and play versions of their games, or massively reduced discounts on packages of games just to get people through the lean times, through this boredom. I got to send a big shout to Deepwater Games, who, I mean, A, are lovely people anyway, but B, just sort of like did a whole bunch of bundles of like really, really good games from their catalog that they just sold off for cheap just to get people through it. People like Jeremy from Man vs. Meeple, who just organized huge sort of like care packages of games. T from Haber, who sort of like done a little like essentially games lending library from their own home over in Portland. And I think that sort of like leads us into something bigger. If one good positive thing comes from this whole situation, it's that we remember that community is vital. Our community is what we need to get through things. And it's not just the idea of standing outside your door at 8:00 on a Thursday night and clapping your hands. It's, be thankful for the people who are putting themselves in harm's way to get the rest of us through a truly shitty situation. But also after that, remember that the people who are in that shitty situation, like the workers who not 4 weeks ago were being called as inessential, as unskilled by the Home Secretary, and now they're the heroes of the hour. Well, fucking pay them what they deserve. Give them a universal basic income. Give them the recognition that a hero, if you want to call them that, deserves to have. I think we're going to see a lot of anger, but anger can be positive. Anger can inspire change. Anger can make you realize that the people who you've trusted in power for so long might not be the best people there for you. I think we're going to see it a lot in the States. I hope we're going to see it a lot in the States, because Christ almighty, there's what? Hang on, I'm going to look at my John Hopkins map. Nearly 500,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus, COVID-19, and that number's only going to go up. It's time for change, and sometimes a huge event like this is the catalyst for change.
Mike, I'd like to say thanks for giving over your time, and hopefully you don't go too crazy in the next couple of months.
Cool. Ben, thank you for having me. It is much appreciated. And thank you for doing this sort of like series as well. It's been awesome seeing the regular pop-ups of another interview with another person in the industry, and hearing sort of like their takes of what our world is now.
If you want to support content like this, you can go to patreon.com/5G4D. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, and if you can, stay at home.